What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of PMP's Den of Antiquities. Today we got kind of an interesting video, one that I think a lot of people have skipped over and just like not seen, and it's the radio drama for the original Star Wars movie, A New Hope. And we're gonna sit down. I got Neal and Brad here, and we're gonna sit down and just shoot the shit about this awesome saga. But before we get started on that, if you guys can smash the like button, subscribe, all that stuff, that helps the channel. And if you're listening to it on audio form, leave me a review. That really helps get my podcast out there. And if you rate it and all that stuff, I'd greatly appreciate that. But let's introduce both you guys. Neal, you want to go first?
I'm on Instagram at rebelscum375, and I do scale 3.75 action figures, pretty much all Rebel themed.
Very cool, very cool. Brad?
Hey, Brad here. Dragon_Hosk on pretty much all the socials. Follow the link tree, find me, and see what's happening.
Oh yeah, link trees are life, man. Link trees are life. You guys can find me at PMPS_DEN. That's PMP's Den on pretty much any and every platform. So go give me a check out there, and now let's get into it. So Neal, you're the one that brought this kind of to our attention, and you've kind of grown up with this from what you were telling me. Do you want to go into like how you found this, and why it's kind of like so important to you?
Yeah. So I probably saw Star Wars when I was like 1990 or 1991, like on VHS, and it was the original the original cover art, like that you find, that's kind of pulp arty looking. And I'd only seen Return of the Jedi and Empire Strikes Back. And I went to this church garage sale at this church that we used to go to, and somebody there had heard that I liked Star Wars, and he had bought me this cover. It was like a book that was printed in like the late 70s or the 80s of Star Wars: A New Hope, and it had masking tape like binding the binding back together. Mm-hmm. And this man was like, I'm gonna get this for Neal because I know he likes Star Wars, and he said, hey, I've got these radio dramas on vinyl that I'm gonna make copies of them for you. And I didn't really understand because I was like, I don't know, 5, maybe 3. I was like 5. Yeah. And so I was going home with this book, and my mom was like, I was asking her all these questions because I hadn't seen any of the scenes in this book, and it was Star Wars, before it was called A New Hope. And she's like, wait, you haven't seen this one? And I was like, no, I've seen, the one in the snow and then the one with Jabba the Hutt. She's like, all right, we're renting it tonight. And so she and my dad went and rented it. And we watched it, and it completely blew my mind because it was like I was experiencing Star Wars for the first time. And then on Sunday, the next day when we got to church, this man had brought me this little white cassette tape with little ink on it. And it was the first episode, Star Wars, Episode 1, A Wind to Shake the Stars, from the radio drama that I just told you guys about. And I remember popping that in our, Ford Taurus on the way home. And like, boom, that guy's voice came over the radio, and I could like see the yellow like Star Wars in my mind. And then boom, he started speaking the crawl, and I was like, oh, this is sick. And like I listened to it like every night before I would go to sleep, and I would just see the characters in my mind, like just see this. And already it was bigger than a movie. It was like this big epic story, because the only epic tale I'd known before Star Wars was probably Robin Hood and maybe The Wizard of Oz. So I kind of got that like C-3PO is the Tin Man, and Princess Leia and Luke Skywalker, you could mix them up into who the heck is Dorothy, you know what I mean? And you could probably go on and on about who's who. But in my mind, it was just this epic story that was bigger than a movie. And I would just like go to sleep listening to this in my mind and seeing the characters and seeing the lasers and like seeing R2-D2 and all the Lucasfilm like official sounds like just made it work. And so I thought that was like the only thing he was giving me. And then the next week I showed up to church, and this man hands me the second tape.
Oh, man.
And I was like, wait, there's more? And he's like, yeah, it's all of Star, like it's all the Star Wars movie, like every episode. And then I kind of put that in my back pocket after having listened to it, the first episode my whole life. It's going through the military. I got out of the military. I was about to get out of the military, started to get back into Star Wars again. And my wife bought me all of those on CD-ROM for my birthday. And it was not just, the first one, the first Star Wars I told you about, but also The Empire Strikes Back and also Return of the Jedi. And we listened to all of them on the way from Great Falls, Montana to Jacksonville, Florida. We listened to all of them on the way there. And I was experiencing like Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi in radio form for the first time as like a grown man after having grown up with Star Wars as a kid.
That's awesome.
That just makes it better for me hearing that story. Just like everything I was saying, that's awesome.
Heck yeah.
And the only toy I had, this was like in the dark ages when there was like no toys. Like it was after Kenner. Kenner had already risen and fallen, and like you could find a couple beat up ones at like garage sales or antique stores or something. But my aunt used to do all these garage sales, and at one of her garage sales that she had, I found this little die cast Kenner land speeder. Like their little die cast mini series that didn't do very well, and it was Luke and C-3PO in this little land speeder with no windshield, and I would just listen to Star Wars with that little land speeder.
Nice. Yeah, I have a whole bunch of them from the Empire one, the Kenner, the metal cast ones. I found them at a garage sale for like $5. They were kind of beat up, but I was like, man, these are so freaking cool. I'd like never seen them before.
Yeah, it was like a Kenner line that failed, like utterly failed in like the 80s, and they're around.
If only they could reproduce that right now.
I know.
They would soar to the top.
I know. Dude, we don't even want to go into like that's a whole podcast within itself that we'll probably have. Is what the hell happened to toys? Because you go to any Walmart, anything, and it's like for some reason there's like a whole bunch of like the lightsaber connect, like the ones that you can connect. And there's a whole bunch of Lando figures. That's all you can find. I don't know why people. I guess they just overmade Lando, or people didn't want to buy Lando because like that's all you can find.
Yeah.
But that's a whole nother thing.
Totally.
But yeah, I mean, so also a little backstory for. I realized like we kind of like just jumped into it. This was a radio drama that I pulled it up. It was done in 1981, and it was kind of like radio was kind of like when I was growing up, radio was kind of already kind of on the out and out, like it was already, and from what I was reading here, they were saying that radio dramas were I guess radio dramas were really big back then, and they were starting to die, die out. What do you guys think? Because like that, I think that's pretty crazy of like somebody selling, like George Lucas sold them the rights and like the sound effects and stuff like that to make this. Could you imagine, or do you think it would happen in like not doing like a radio drama, but like in like today's? Do you think like Disney would ever like allow somebody to have like a podcast and recast that? Like,
no.
Like that to me was crazy. Just reading that George Lucas was like, yeah, we'll just do a radio podcast and have Mark Hamill and Anthony Daniels. I think Billy D did some Lando, right? I haven't listened to the whatchamacallit, but I saw he was on the casting thing. But that to me, it was just like, that was kind of like a once in a lifetime sort of thing that happened, and not a lot of people know about it. Because like I consider myself pretty deep in Star Wars, and like I had no clue until you had brought it up in the chat, So that's just crazy that we'll probably, at least like to the magnitude that Star Wars got, like never get something like that again, which is like really crazy to me.
But you got to remember, in 81, that's right after Empire Strikes Back. So anything they could do to keep promoting the franchise, which now the franchise promotes itself. I mean, you say the word Wars and it's like it's sold, boom, everybody's showing up. Now everybody's going to complain about it, but everybody shows up for the initial run and everybody's there. But I don't know, man. That was different times, but I'm glad we still have access to that old stuff.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And I think like George Lucas was always like, hey, if other people can make the sandbox bigger, then more people can play in it. Like, he even like let people like rip off Star Wars, like the fact that he let Mel Brooks do Spaceballs, and then the fact that he let like fans make fun of Star Wars in Star Wars films, like all the old like what were they, the Troopers? There was like a knockoff of Cops, but with stormtroopers, and they ended up shooting. What's that called? They end up shooting
man.
Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru in like a dispute. Or something.
I know they did a lot of like Robot Chicken stuff and like a lot of that style.
Yeah.
Because that stuff is
and
super
George's.
Isn't he on Robot Chicken? Like he's on the episode.
Yeah. They have a whole bunch of.
But George was always like, "How can we make the sandbox bigger?"
Oh yeah.
And the more people, the merrier. And I think he sold the rights for like $1, right?
It was something. I mean, like back in the '80s, everything probably cost like next to nothing compared to how it costs now. So it was probably not super crazy expensive. He probably just saw it as like an advertisement kind of thing. Like he was just like, "Hey, this is advertising money right here. There you go."
And I think his alma mater produced it in the article that I read. And so he was like really touched that his alma mater, like the University of Southern California, wanted to like produce it. So he sold them the rights.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think it was, I want to say it was produced by, I was like, oh, John Madden. That's cool. And then it's like, it's not that John Madden. It's like a different like playwright John Madden. I was like, that's cool. We like did like all the Madden games and then produced a Star Wars radio drama, but no, not really. But Brad, so you hadn't seen it before, right? Like you hadn't heard about it, or
had not. I mean, I can't say that I hadn't heard about it. I never gave it the time of day. And then
okay.
When Neal popped up in chat and was like, "Man, you guys are missing out. You guys are, and then it was like, hey, let's do a podcast for it." I said, "You know what? Let's do it. This thing's been out long enough. Let me give it a shot." And I mean, from the second I turned it on, I tried to listen to it at my desk at work, and I was like, "Nope, I need time to just be zoned out and this be my world." And had a couple trips where I was traveling around, and I listened to probably a couple hours of it. And then I spent, I guess it was last Saturday, I was out cutting the grass and playing it and just kind of getting zoned out and just absorbing it. Man, it was the best. So Neal, thank you.
Heck yeah. I like it. I like it a lot. I was like, we were talking beforehand, I was saying for anybody who ends up listening to this, or he's kind of like on the fence, because I know even a couple people on our not Discord, our chat were like, I don't know, like 4 hours is a lot, like I don't know. And I'm just like, you guys, I mean, you're missing out. Like there's like so many like little, like I know it is a lot, but like there's so many little moments that you don't get. It's kind of like, it's like I'm listening to like an audiobook or something like that, there's so many like little bitty moments that you just don't get in the movie. And it's like it's like a nice little slice of like headcanon, like it doesn't, they don't say it in the movies, but like when you read it, like I think that those conversations like actually took place.
Yes. The one that got me the most was, and again, I watched New Hope today, was the conversation between Kenobi and the other Corellian pilot. And he's like, yeah, I'm the best pilot on this. And he's like, well, I'm busy, but I got this other guy. Then today watching A New Hope, and all you see is Kenobi talking to a guy. You're focused on other stuff, but it's there in the background. We are getting all these other conversations. We're getting them, and it's, again, filling in those blanks, giving us stuff that we've never had. It's just those background conversations that, we never would have thought about till now,
Oh yeah.
So when I went to see the special edition in the Dollar Theater, and I saw the Jabba the Hutt scene, like with new, CGI Jabba, I was like, oh, this is Han Solo and Heater. Like they just rewrote that scene and wrote Jabba out of it. And I was like, this is a great scene. Like this, even as a kid, I was like, why isn't this in there? This like adds so much to Han Solo.
Yeah.
And so much to like, okay, why is he on the run? And why do we care that he's a spice dealer and blah, blah, blah.
And to me, sorry to cut you off, but hearing the radio broadcast and then watching it, it makes more sense of all the characters that are there in the background. It does fit for Jabba, but it being Heater, having a task and having a crew, it just fills in all the people better for me.
Well, with that deleted scene, because I know, or not deleted scene, but like because like I only saw the one with Jabba in it. I never saw like the one before they went through and didn't like edit everything. Um, I thought that guy that was talking to Han was Jabba. Like they just hadn't made him an alien yet. But like
So,
reading
well,
this, I'm like, oh, it was Heater.
well, if I'm not mistaken, in the original cut, the movie I grew up with, that scene wasn't in the movie. I mean,
Right.
it didn't exist. But I want to
Right.
say that it was never in the movie. It was never Heater. I think it was always supposed to be Jabba, but it's before they
Yes.
designed him being a big lizard. He was just a
Right.
big fat greasy guy. So,
Ah,
Right.
okay, okay.
yeah.
Yeah, and so like I think Brian Daly like read the script of A New Hope or Star Wars at the time and was like, "This is a great scene. Let's replace the name Jabba the Hutt because we don't know what a Jabba the Hutt is, and let's make him another gangster." So they just like boom slapped another name on him, and there's that scene like in the radio drum.
Heck yeah, heck yeah. I knew I was in for a treat of watching this or listening to this when they go through like that little like canyon race at the very beginning, and I was just like, oh,
Yeah.
Oh my!
I was like,
gosh.
oh, okay.
Dude.
And like he's like
Yes.
pod racing with like his like friends, essentially. I mean, I know it's not a pod racer, but he's
Yeah.
like racing through the dunes and like
Yep.
cutting through canyons and stuff like
Talking
that to
about
win the
Beggars
race.
Canyon.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then Big shows up. We actually get the history of him and Biggs. Oh, parts of it. Where Biggs has come back from flight school and he's telling him there's so much more out there. It's
Oh, yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Well, seeing
It's so
that
good.
too, like and I don't know, I'm sure you guys might have a better understanding of this than me, but there's a scene where Luke is talking to Biggs, and they have like binoculars, and they're like looking up into like the stuff, like
Yep.
that's that
Yes.
scene. That's that scene of him being like, "Oh, I saw a star battle up there," and that's why they're looking.
Yep.
Because like you never know, at least I didn't know why they were like looking up at the, at the stars and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I was like, oh man, I was like that fills in so much. Like I was like that deleted scene with that audio, like I could put kind of two and two together, and that like it makes so much more sense.
Yeah.
And then let's see what else do we have. I'm trying. There's so many different. I have. Sometimes I have the mind of a goldfish, so I always write down my notes.
Smart man.
Go for it.
So I'm trying to look into. The one that I wrote down that was the next is. I thought it was cool that we kind of get a little bit more backstory with Leia and her father, Bail Organa, and how he kind of doesn't want to join the rebels, and then they kind of like have to join the rebels, and then there's like the Imperial that like fancies her, right? And then they end up like killing that guy.
Man.
They end up that's like not in the movie at all. Like at all.
No.
And I'm just like
And her showing up at like this rebellion that's like happening, and like the Empire's like locking it down, and you see them like, oh, there's an outbreak over here, and we got to lock that down, and then like Darth Vader shows up, and he's not like fully formed, like the fully formed Vader that we know. He's this like emotional, like crazy, like off the wire Vader that like he could just blow up at any second, And Brock Peters does such a good job as Vader, and it's like, okay, James Earl Jones is Vader, but Brock Peters does a pretty damn good job as Vader.
oh yeah.
And that whole scene where the dude's like, "Oh, it's absorbed on my brain with hypnotic imprint, and we can't talk out here," and all this stuff is so cool.
Oh yeah. That scene too with because like they never show obviously like torture in Star Wars, right? Like it's always like you kind of get like a split second of it, and then it cuts.
It's implied,
Yeah, like with the Han on Bespin when they're doing like the zap torture chamber thing. But the one with Leia where she gets like poked by that like injected with that serum. You kind of see I don't know if you guys have seen Rebels, but you kind of see a little bit of that in Rebels when Hera gets interrogated like at the very end of the show. And she's kind of like loopy and all that stuff, but you don't really get to see like what happens. Like it was interesting to see that it's like I mean, I guess what I would amount it to is like they gave her like some like LSD, like a really high powered LSD, and was like tricking her and stuff, because like he was like, oh yeah, he's like, you're on fire, you're about to burn to death, you're not gonna make it, and
She's
stuff
screaming.
like, yeah,
I mean,
she's like, help me, help me. I'm like,
gosh, yeah.
whoa. I was like, that got dark real quick. I was like,
Yeah.
it like took me back for a second, because I was like, dang. And also the fact that like he doesn't know that obviously that's his daughter, and that he's putting her through all that, like that to me was just absolutely crazy. And I wanted
But
to,
one thing that I thought was so interesting is how Vader immediately goes, make sure she's okay, make sure there's no permanent damage. Now, I think some of that was to balance out just in case he had to send her back to Alderaan, but
Right.
there was this weird sense of compassion for him, worried about her, you know what I mean? And it could have just been coincidence, but I don't know. Something stood out about whenever he stops and he takes her to that torture point and then brings her all the way back down, gets her
Right.
calm, and then, hey guys, get her to a medical officer and get her checked out.
Yeah, it's almost like she's hypnotized. He's like telling her what's happening.
Yes.
Your nerve endings are inflamed. Your flesh is about to burst or whatever. And then, it's just this crazy, like you said, it's like this psychedelic ride that she's on. And I remember as a kid, my sister would make me turn that down. Like she couldn't listen to it. Like she couldn't handle the torture scene. She'd be like, oh, I can't listen to this. And she'd like turn it down.
it's pretty intense. It goes from like 0 to 60 real quick. Like,
Yes.
you're like, oh, cool. Like, it's like, we're on an adventure. Yeah. And then it's just like torture scene. And you're like, oh, okay.
We're in this.
But
what did y'all think about them, the way they stole the rebel plans? Like, of course it's not canon now. They like this convoy attacked an Imperial convoy, in the middle of space, and then these rebels transferred the plans to them in this like system, and how like 3PO and R2 are involved in that. Did y'all like that?
Yeah.
Or you can go first.
No. I mean, I guess because I have such strong love for Rogue One, I was like, I don't want to hear this, but I do appreciate it because at the time we didn't have Rogue One, and honestly, if I had heard this before seeing Rogue One, I probably would have maybe shaped my view of Rogue One a little bit different, So again, it's having those details that we didn't have before, but hearing, now it was a convoy that got stopped, and the information was extracted, thrown in the droids, and then they were shot out. I like it.
I think I want to second that, really, because like obviously, like in my opinion, Rogue One is a lot cooler of a story than what obviously like it's more fleshed out, right? Like they spent a whole like 2 hours developing that, but it is cool to see kind of like I'm very into, because I guess I'm getting into like the expanded universe now with a lot of my reading and stuff like that. The lot of like what ifs of Star Wars, and that's kind of like a what if, like what if it panned out differently, or what if something else happened. So I was like, oh, that's an interesting spin. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I have that in my notes and I missed it, so I'm glad you brought that up. But like, it's just it's crazy to see like what was thought to be like the plans back then, and like how stuff gets like changed over time and stuff like that, because that's happened. Like Star Wars is notorious for that, right? Like setting kind of something in motion and then being like, hey, that I know we said that, but that's not how it is anymore. It actually happens like this, so
I remember like going to Rogue One, being like open to them changing that, because I knew like the radio things weren't canon.
Oh yeah.
And going like, well, what if they listen to it, and what if they kind of incorporate that, and kind of like thinking about it. But of course, I wasn't let down. Like Rogue One, of course, is amazing. But in my mind, I like that these two different stories can like coexist. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's just fun to pretend.
Well, that's like what we were talking about actually last night when we were doing the Clone Wars. We were talking about the Clone Wars. Is it's kind of cool that like the 2003 kind of Tarkovsky 2D animated one is not canon. It's not canon at all. It's like the Clone Wars that was made retconned all that stuff. But if you want it in your head canon, you can it's still, there's a lot of similarities in it where a lot of that stuff can still potentially happen, because it's not directly said that didn't happen, So it's kind of cool that like that's the one thing I think that's really cool about Star Wars is you can kind of make up your own head canon and what you think happened, which you can't do that with a lot of these other like franchises and stuff like that. And I think that's really cool,
I also think there's just like a different there are different types of Star Wars history, right? So there's like the official canon chronology, then there's like the Legends chronology, then there's the new canon, right? And then there's like the history of Star Wars, like how it actually got made, and then what did George Lucas do to keep his independent film alive and to keep people talking about it. So like Splinter of Mind's Eye, the first novel that came out after Star Wars, like nobody, I doubt any new Star Wars fans have like heard of that, right? But that was like something he did. He's like, oh, this is a quick treatment I have for a cheap sequel in case it flops. If I can just do a cheap sequel, it will be Splinter of Mind's Eye. It was really good, so we just had somebody write a novel, take his treatment to keep it alive, right? And so like there's like different types of Star Wars history. There's like the official storyline. There's the storyline that fans like made happen in Legends. Then there's like the actual what happened, like with Carrie Fisher and Mark Hamill, and you know, you start listening to all their novels, it's a completely different story. Like how Star Wars is basically masking tape and tinfoil like taped together for the camera. And we were like, oh, it's genius. And when you hear about Anthony Daniels and like the pain he went through as C-3PO, like having plastic like stabbing into his shins and stuff,
panic attacks, can't get the helmet off.
Yeah, you're like, this is nuts. Like this is like a poor man's show that we're like flipping out about.
Oh yeah,
you know, they were actually like taped together. So like there's different types of Star Wars history, and so I just see this as like a part of like, okay, this is just a part of how George Lucas kept his little independent film alive, you know?
Yeah, dude, it's crazy. Like, it's like, I think in like this day and age, I'm not saying it's impossible, but I highly doubt that that's ever going to happen again. Like that, just like, I think I think it was just like the right time, the right place, you know, like, I just don't think that, I mean, and who knows? I mean, anything's possible, but it'd be a lot to try to replicate that again.
I mean, I think if we got anything, it's going to be a read-along book for a kid. You know what I mean? Where it's just tidbits. I don't think we'll ever get the extra dialogue or any of that stuff again. You know, it's like when you go from a book to a movie and you're like, man, they cut out all of this stuff. You know, we got that back in the radio drama, but I'm with you. Disney has such a hard grip on everything. If they do, it's going to be released through them. You know, and who would they get to voice everybody? So, you know, and now, hey, for all we know, it could be better. I mean, all those original people could come back, you know.
That'd be cool.
So we'll see.
Back when I was getting out of the military in like 2013, 2012, I read about this radio drama, this non-canon radio drama that they made for like Star Wars Celebration or something. And it was inspired by this one we're talking about. And it's Ashley Eckstein voicing a character that's not Ahsoka Tano. And a couple other people. Oh, and the announcer that does, he talks like this at the beginning of the Clone Wars. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He does the crawl. And I remember I found that on some like podcast, and it like reignited my excitement for these dramas that we're talking about. So there's one really non-canon one out there that's kind of inspired by this idea.
Oh,
and they live share it. Yeah, and they live performed it in front of an audience. I'll see if I can find it, and I'll send you guys a link.
That's awesome.
Heck yeah, definitely.
Yep. It's pretty cool. But it was like, it reminded me. Right, yeah. It reminded me of like when I was a kid in my bed, like looking at my glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling, like listening to these radio dramas we're talking about, you know.
Heck yeah, man. Another thing I wanted, because like my biggest thing, like I can, like the original trilogy is probably like I grew up with the prequels, so like prequels always have like a special place in my heart. But like I think my favorite trilogy is the original trilogy. Like that's kind of like my personal, and the fact that like we get these like little moments. I wanted to talk about a few of them, and the one was we talked about Leia being tortured, but also Leia's reaction to Alderaan exploding was completely different. Like she's like flipping out and like screaming and crying and like she like doing all these different sound effects, whereas like you kind of just get like, I think if I remember correctly, because it's been a second since I watched A New Hope, she just kind of screams a little bit and that's it, right?
Yeah.
But in this one, you really get you get that scene, and then when Luke and her are on the Falcon, you kind of get her talking about it, being like, "Hey, I know you lost Ben. I know that sucks, but you have to do what's right by him. Like he sacrificed yourself, just like my people sacrificed themselves. We have to keep moving forward for them, and just do the best that we can, and what they would their image and what they would do." And I was just like, man, only if we got that. I would have been fine with 5 more minutes of screen time if we would have had a dialogue like that, because that's my biggest thing with A New Hope, is that Leia doesn't react at all.
Well, so and a lot of folks complain about her consoling Luke after seeing Ben die, yet she just lost a whole planet. It's like, dude, you just lost your aunt and uncle and this old guy who lived in the mountains, but yet a whole planet of my people are gone, and she's being the bigger person.
Of cultures.
Yes, gone.
Yeah, well, it just gives perspective, because in that one, I think it even makes Luke, because you kind of just be like, all right, Luke, kind of rub some dirt. I know it sucks, but rub some dirt on it and keep moving forward. But in this one, he's asking her, he's like, what do I do? He's like, the only people that I thought would be here forever, and my aunt and uncle are gone. He gets really mad about, because he didn't know that was Vader, which is also something I didn't know. That I mean, it's obvious. Luke, why would Luke know that that's Vader if he's never seen anybody? But he kind of phrases it in a way of help me. I don't know what to do. I've kind of lost everybody. So I really think that I really wish we would have got that in the movie, because I think that scene would have been just because in the movie it just she's patting him on the back and oh, it's okay, bud, it's okay, kind of patting him on the head, and then when they're escaping, there's a scene where you see Han run down, or you listen to Han run down the hallway hooting and hollering, and then they run back, and then they're kind of in a stall period where it's just them two, and Han's hey,
Han and Chewie.
Yeah, and Han's hey, if they're not here by the time we reach the Falcon, we're out of here.
We're ditching it.
Yeah, forget them. Yeah. And you don't see that in the movies. You kind of feel Han's kind of slowly coming around at that point to being with them. But in the radio drama, he's just nah, we're out of here. I don't care about the money. I don't care about anything. If we get there, we're taking off and we're going. And Chewbacca is kind of always the voice of reason, being hey man, don't be a dick. Come on, we gotta, So I thought that was cool. And then there's the split second where they're I was a little confused about where they're at, Luke and Leia, but they're in a cupboard or something like that, or in a they're hiding from the Imperials, and Leia's hey, how did you get into this? Where are you coming from? And he kind of gives her the whole spiel. It's those little moments, man, that just really I feel pull a lot of those scenes together. I don't know if all the scenes would have needed to be in the movie, but just to know that we have those extra ones, it's it's so nice,
Right.
Hey, I'd be good with a 4-hour live action. I mean, dude, I'm not gonna lie to you. I mean, just let's go.
Right. Not about the radio drama, but about kind of that scene between Obi-Wan and because I want to see. I know you guys are original trilogy fans as well. Would you have you seen the one where they've redone it, gone back through and re-edited that fight scene where it's Luke and Obi-Wan fighting?
It's Vader and Obi-Wan fighting in that hallway.
Yeah.
And it's a legit fight. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah, certainly.
I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on that. What would you have rather seen something like that, or are you still happy with kind of what we got? Because what we got is definitely it's maybe a 22-year time span, and they're kind of a little slow, right. So are you guys kind of happy with what we got, or would you have rather seen something like that? Because I'm just curious. That's just a left field question.
I kind of think about it in the context of its time. It was experimental. It was this thing that had never been tried before. It was literally reflective tape on PVC pipe or some acrylic tube, and it was this fight style that hadn't been, Ray parked. You know what I mean?
Right.
It hadn't been developed and even really thought about. And it and when you read about George Lucas was having panic attacks and was literally getting ulcers because of how stressed out he was. He was literally just shooting this thing to get it done and get it, put it on film, and Nobody thought it would work. Even his best friends thought, dude, you're high, man. This is going to suck. And the fact that he pulled it. So, like, I try to watch A New Hope under that context. Like, this is a complete experimental film. And the dude pulled it off. Now, of course, when I was, like, in 5th grade and I saw episode 1 in theaters, and then I was like, oh, man, lightsabers are rad. Like, how are we supposed to, like, who is this Obi-Wan? And, you know, this dude's doing back flips and front flips and side flips and flipping his saber around and cutting dudes in half. And, like, this Obi-Wan is doing this. You know?
Yeah.
And, like, but even in my head, I was like, oh, it's just because it's old school. You know?
Right, yeah. Brad, what about you?
In my head canon, you know, yeah, we're all the same. Like, knowing what we have now for Star Wars and looking at the fight scenes, 2 different worlds, you know what I mean? But how I try to keep it alive in my head was Obi-Wan, he was trying to kill time, let you know, he knows, he can see the Falcon, nobody's there, you know, full of stormtroopers. So he's just, you know, taunting Vader, just keeping him busy, trying to hold him over until everybody gets out, and then he gives a look and then, you know, takes the final swipe, and then it's game over. So in my head, I try to play it. He was killing time. He just having some fun with Vader, because at the end of the day, both of them are older. No matter how much, you know, technology Vader had applied to him, your body is still your body, and the dark side can hold you for so long. But he wasn't the Emperor, you know what I mean? So he was still suffering. He's old too. So, you know, in my head, Obi-Wan was just, you know, burning up time. And then finally, when he saw everybody come to the ship, all right, cool, you know, time to check out, and he did it. He took it.
Very cool, very cool. Another one that I had was Tarkin was interesting because there's like a little when they're like kind of circling Yavin. If I remember that, because when I was listening to it, I was a little confused on who was speaking at the time. Obviously, because I'm blanking on who's the guy that voices Tarkin and plays Tarkin in like the actual movie. I'm blanking on his name.
Peter
Cushing.
Cushing.
Peter
Yeah.
Cushing?
Yeah. Like he obviously didn't. So I was trying to remember who had like because like there was another Imperial guy talking to him that like kind of wanted to be his like right man, but Tarkin was like, hey, prep my vehicle to like get out of here, like just and his like left hand guy was like, hey, I don't think that's a smart move, like you should stay here, especially with these rebels being nothing, like, you know, and then he goes in and he's like, oh yeah, he's like, we're not leaving in our moment of triumph, and I was just like, that's an interesting kind of spin on it, because you kind of
this is how I know Filoni listened to this, because when you see Tarkin in Clone Wars, he tries to pull that on Anakin and Obi. I can't remember where they were trying to pick him up from, but his whole time was he wasn't going to stay on the front lines. Get me out of here. I'm not hanging out for this. Get me out of here. He, you know, but what we know of him in the movies, he was this hardened, you know, Grand Moff, and he was going to ride it out. But no, the radio drama in the episodes he's in Rebels, it shows his true sides.
Yeah, for sure.
He was just there for himself. He's there for the political gain and the power. I mean, I can't say he didn't get his hands dirty, but he was good at giving orders to the guys that were going to get the job done to him. He wasn't going to make the same sacrifices they were.
Yeah, he's certainly an officer. He wasn't going to make the sacrifices of an enlisted man. He was a gentleman, the kind of like King Longshanks when he sees the victory happening in Braveheart on the field. He's like, "Shall we retire?" And they like hop away on their horses. Like that's kind of what Tarkin is.
Well, it's funny.
That's
too,
a good way to put it,
because he they kind of flip flop on him too, because there's in one comic like he is like a complete like Vader's like hunting him like on a planet or something like that, and they're like playing like a hunting sport, and he's like he like beats an Imperial officer to death, and he's like he looks like freaking Rambo when they torture him in the second one, where he's all cut up and stuff like that. He takes off his shirt to fight this like Imperial guy, and he's like all like shredded and like ripped up, and I'm like, really? What is this Tarkin? Like, what the heck? I'm trying to think of what I think it's a comic. I'm pretty sure it's a comic book, and then I think there's a book where like Tarkin basically has to like outsmart Vader because he knows Vader's like super powerful, and he knows like Vader's Anakin. Obviously, there's like a couple people in the Empire that know that Vader is Anakin. Tarkin being one of them, and he had to like outsmart him and set traps and all that stuff. It's a crazy book, but it's weird to see
Tarkin,
that.
I don't think Tarkin could ever go toe to toe with
No.
Anakin or Vader.
No, and that's like the whole that's like the whole thing is he kind of has to do like almost like an Arnold Schwarzenegger versus like the Predator style thing where he's like he knows like guns and blood and bullets like they're not gonna do anything. So you kind of gotta like go do this like ancient like tactic and stuff. So it's weird to see kind of like that dynamic, like the differences like of like which Tarkin you see, you know.
So actually, let's remove Arnold. Let's make it Prey, because I think he's more like a 16-year-old female, body-wise, than what he was Arnold. So,
also shout out to that movie because that movie was awesome, man. Like I was like,
I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, dude,
check it out.
You're
I need to watch
for a treat. It's
perfect
probably.
twist,
I like
man.
the Predator.
If I had to say, I've seen like a lot of the I don't think I've seen them all. I kind of fell off when like they were like doing the AVP sort of stuff. Like I think I watched like the first one, and then I don't know how many they have now, but
yeah, I saw one of those in theaters. Like, this is dumb.
Yeah, I think this. I didn't mind Predators. And we'll get back to the radio drama here in a second. I didn't mind Predators. I kind of liked that like they dropped all these like infantry people like different from like all across the world to like hunt them. I thought that idea was cool. It was entertaining. Like you don't go to a Predator movie to be like I want to see stuff blow up and people get like you know like Mortal Kombat stuff. Like that's what I want to see. Like I don't like give me a loose story like the first one. And then just action, the rest, and like it was very kind of like John Wick-esque, you know. So I highly recommend it. Like, and the Predator looks really cool. Yeah. So, but back to the radio.
I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, I would highly recommend it. I really enjoyed the scene with Han and Luke after they blew up the Death Star and they're back like on Yavin, and they're kind of just like shooting the shit. Like right before they go into this ceremony thing. And it's so funny because you see Harrison Ford as kind of like this guy who acts like he knows what he's doing and all that. So he's like, how do you like, what are we doing? You just go up and accept the medal? Like, he's like, he has no idea like what's going on.
Just stay calm. It's okay.
I was sad though, because I had always thought that Han gave Luke his clothes to wear. And like I always thought that was like, oh man, that's like a cool like bonding friendship thing. Like, hey kid, you can't be wearing like your dusty farm clothes. Like here's just some of my like everyday stuff. But the rebels gave him it, so I was like, oh man. But like at the same time, that's still cool. Like I thought that whole scene was, you know, they're all chuckling and laughing and just kind of like it reminded me of like I grew up in like sports and stuff like that. Like dudes just shooting the shit in locker rooms, you know, and like you know, it was kind of like that sort of kind of little like rambunctious.
What did you guys think about the part where Han is asking for his money when he returns Leia, and he's like, hey, you know, it's time to pay up, and they're like, well, you know, we don't have this, you know, we're a small rebel faction, and this is what we have. We got a bunch of raw material. I take that. Well, that's supposed to keep our ships up and running. Not my problem. You got to pay me. And then the guy's like, okay, cool, I'll pay you. And you know, that was, again, dialogue that we didn't have before and a scene that should have been there, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Or how about the scene where, like, there's two scenes I want to bring up. One where Han is trying to talk Luke out of hitting the Death Star. It goes way more in depth. And then Luke's scene, like, in an X-Wing simulator, like, frying TIE fighters and just, like, compressing it. You know?
Yeah. Well, actually getting trained, that was a good one.
I thought it was cool that he like actually like cares about Luke. He's like talking to Leia. He's like, look, he's like, this kid's gonna like that's gonna be his last decision he ever makes.
Yes.
Like he's not gonna make it. Like that battle station, like in kind of he gives kind of it kind of honestly gave me a little bit of like Finn from The Force Awakens, where he goes to Maz. He's like, you have no idea what the First Order is capable of, because he worked for the First Order, and like in Han's backstory, he was an Imperial pilot, so he kind of knows. He's like, you have no idea like what these guys are capable of, and like he's gonna die, and like you need to go talk.
Yeah, so he's like, do you love Luke? Do you love Luke?
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. I'm listening.
You got
Han was saying like. Han was saying, he's like, do you love Luke? And she's like, yes. And he's like, well, then go save his life. And go talk him out of it. Go save his life. And it's like, whoa, that's awesome. That's rad, you know. You know, Luke is like caught up in being a hometown hero. And He's got like Biggs talking in the back of his head, and he's even met Biggs and like fired up to like going into a fight with Biggs, like wing on wing, wingmen together, just like Beggars Canyon back home. And Han's like, dude, you have no idea what combat is like. You're gonna get eaten alive out there.
Yeah. Did you when Han tells her to run off and go get Luke, and then she's like I guess it's because they already maybe the radio guys had a hint of what was to come. I don't know, but she's like, it's not that kind of love. It's a different kind of love. I can't explain it. It's, I thought that was kind of, setting us up for the brother sister thing more than the, what we didn't know for the first two movies, and then find out in the third one, like, oh wait, hold on, what now? So I thought that was a pretty good twist.
Oh yeah. Yeah, she was like what would she say, like a kiss for luck or something like that. So it's not like, it wasn't like a romantic thing or anything like that. It was more of like a, hey, like good luck, like may the force be with you,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's all. If you guys have anything else you want to bring up, I think that's like all the notes that I had like written down. But do you have anything else that you guys want to add to it?
I guess like in the final dogfight, when Biggs gets killed, like Luke does have, from what I remember, have a little emotional moment. Like he realizes his best friend was just boom, evaporated in space, and now his body's like boom in the vacuum of space. Even as a kid, I was like, aren't they friends? Like, because I listened to this series my whole life, and like Biggs, I was like, oh, that's Biggs. How? Oh, they were friends, and until Special Edition came out, where I think that scene's in there in the Special Edition.
Yeah.
Where Biggs catches Luke under an X-wing, and they're like talking under an X-wing. Either that or it's in a deleted scene somewhere.
No, it's in it. It's in it for sure.
It's in it.
Okay.
I don't know if his death is in it though. Is it, or am I mistaken? On it?
It's on the Death Star run for sure. Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know if they cut that out or not. But that's, well, I think it really, like Luke is a quick learner, I think, because like I think he was kind of in like those moments, I think he was kind of taking into a fact like what Leia was telling him, like, hey, you got to stay on, like you got to, like the people that like get blown up, die, like the people that are close to you, like you're doing this for them, like you're honoring them. So like in that moment he was like, I got to literally stay on target, So that was a really
awesome.
really cool scene, man. I mean this whole thing is cool. Like if anybody out there, if you guys are on the fence about it, just go ahead and do it. Like
do it.
Oh yeah.
Make the plunge.
Yeah, it's worth your time. It's worth the investment, because I know time is a very valuable commodity to a lot of people, and it's definitely
if you're driving well, I don't know. It was hard to listen and drive because I get zoned out, but because you're just so getting pulled into the story. But if you got some time, pop in there, take sit in a low lit room, listen it, absorb it. That'll be 4 hours of your life that you won't ask for back, because you're going to be more fulfilled.
It's also got John Williams music in it, so like how could you not? It's at the bare minimum, listen to that. Like
and again, like you guys said earlier, man, for them to pull in, they didn't pull in the heavy hitters, but because John Williams, he was big back then, but still, he was probably like, hey, yeah, let me jump in this. I'll get a small payday. Let me get this. Let's just do this. But yeah, I mean.
Yeah, and the Lucasfilm, the official Lucasfilm sounds are in there. Like, have you ever listened to like Lord of the Rings on tape? Like I listened to a Lord of the Rings radio drama, and it was a completely different interpretation than Peter Jackson. And like I didn't read Lord of the Rings growing up. I've read them now, and I think they're dope. And I can now picture them outside of Peter Jackson. But when I first listened to it, it wasn't like the score from Peter Jackson's movies. It wasn't like the same actors. They interpreted Gollum like completely different, and I just couldn't like get there. So like imagine if like Lucasfilm sold the rights, but it's like, oh, but I'm gonna keep the rights to the sounds and stuff. Like, so imagine if like the sounds weren't in it. It would be weird.
That would be really weird. Yeah.
So like you hear R2 and you're like, oh, that means R2's worried. And oh, that's R2 being sarcastic. And oh, that's R2 farting or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, and what I love so much about the series is like you get inside of Luke's like headspace, like as a kid on Tatooine, like how bullied he is and how like much of an outsider, how hard he fights. And I think that would be great if they bring in a Kenobi 2 I think it would be great to bring in all of these characters that he interacts with at Anchorhead and at Toshi Station, like Cammy and Wendy, and what's it, Deke, like the way that Deke is like, oh, Wormy against the what's he say? Anyways, it's just the way Wormy against the Fixer. That's gonna be a slaughter.
Yeah.
Like the way he's like teasing and like the way they're like hurting Luke's feelings and like poking at him. I think that would just be awesome Kenobi episode stuff.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean,
and two, I think with Filoni and them, they know this thing exists. I can definitely see them pulling from this for that, because that would, like you said, that would be perfect teenage, drama for us to see.
Also, Darth Maul versus Obi-Wan, because like that happens during that time period. Totally have him.
Dope.
They've already casted an Ezra. Like, come on, man! Like, make it happen.
The fact that you brought up Ezra, so Rebels did it. But you guys have both seen Rebels, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, did Vader not sound like Chopper? I cannot remember his name, but Chopper buddies up with it's like a C-3PO, but he's an Imperial. He was on the cart.
Yeah.
Darth Vader, in his voice. The first time I heard it, I was like, "That's that guy." So I never went back to look to see if it's the same actor. But again, hearing Vader's voice to hearing that droid's voice, I know Filoni's seen this. I mean, it's just almost to the same pitch, the delivery of the lines and stuff. Just listen to the radio drama and watch the YouTube clip of that droid. It's the same.
If it's the one I'm thinking about, I always thought that robot sounded like a robotic version of Snape from Harry Potter.
Yep, Alan Rickman. Yep.
Yeah, like he sounds literally like a, so I can kind of see like that kind of thing. But it also gave me, I don't know if you've ever heard, like what Vader sounded like by the original guy that was like in the suit.
Yes.
In the suit.
Yeah. Like I was like, oh man, it had. Like, obviously, like, that guy was Irish, and he had, like, more of an Irish accent. But it kind of gave me that same style. David Prowse, that's what I'm awful with names. So I knew it, and then, like, as soon as you said it, I was like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. But, yeah, I can't remember names off the top of my head. But, yeah, it gave me those type of vibes, which I thought was really cool. Because his voice, like, I mean, honestly, like, James Earl Jones is the GOAT. Like, nobody's gonna beat him, honestly. Like he's literally the GOAT.
Well, poor Prowse, he didn't even know he was getting his lines were getting cut out. I mean, what did I just watch?
That sucks. But also at the end of the day, dude, you're still playing Vader, so chill.
You'll forever get to live in cons and make tons of money. Getting your signature handed out. So
but yeah, it did give me a lot of those vibes too, which I thought was kind of interesting to kind of see. And I'm listening to. Man, I think it's Dark Lords of the Sith. It's where Palpatine and Vader are like stranded on like a planet together, and they have to like fight their way off the planet.
Oh wow!
I think it's Ryloth. I want to say they get stuck on Ryloth or something like that. But
the Syndulas.
Yeah,
Who's hunting them?
Yeah, they're in there too. It's Hera's dad is fighting like the
Syndulla.
Yeah. So but yeah, it gave me those type of vibes too, because Vader kind of has a similar kind of like. I think they automatron his voice a little bit more, so he sounds a little bit more like James Earl Jones. But yeah, it gave me those type of vibes as well.
Can you imagine? I just made something up in my head, like an episode of like let's just write our own little episode of something right here, where Vader's like voice box gets like destroyed, kind of like in Up, that one dog like goes from being the alpha to being the alpha. Can you imagine like if Vader was like wrecked and now he has like this tiny little voice and he's trying to be intimidating.
They had the perfect time in Kenobi when the helmet got slashed and the modulator was like cutting in and out. Mm-hmm. That would have been the time.
Oh yeah,
he'd have been like, "All right, I'm just gonna leave you in your own pain. I'm out of here."
What makes me think of that? I don't know if you guys are like into Pirates of the Caribbean, but in the third one, they go to like the pirate gathering or whatever, and there's a pirate who doesn't. Exactly. Yeah. He doesn't. I think he doesn't like talk. He has his hand, and he just stands up, and he's like, "Yeah, we will go to." He sounds like a little chipmunk. Like that's what I would imagine would happen, which would be so funny.
That's legit.
Well, Man, that was we're almost at an hour. We're at 54 minutes, so I think that's a good talk. I'm definitely gonna set something up for us to do the Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi one too, because I'm totally interested to
Now,
see.
Well, hopefully we sold this for other folks to
yeah,
listen to it. Hopefully when Neal started this thing off, his rundown of childhood memories of this, if that didn't sell you, get out of Star Wars. Just move on. Go watch Star Trek. Go watch something else.
dude. And then look at like Google the images of the voice actors, because they're like surrounding this microphone, and like Brock Peters, who plays Tom Robinson in To Kill a Mockingbird, he's like an accomplished actor, right? Who's playing Darth Vader, and you have all Mark Hamill's there and Anthony Daniels, and they're surrounding this microphone. It's in black and white, and like I don't know if you guys are theater buffs, but I was a theater nerd in high school, and it just looks so Shakespearean. Like you can imagine them like in character playing these characters, and it just looks Shakespearean. It just like you just look at the photos and you're like, wow, they're playing these characters, and in my mind it's real, but they're just voicing them, and they're making in my mind I'm going, wow, these characters are almost bigger than the movies. Like they're legend, just like George Lucas has succeeded in creating this myth, because now it works without the images. If you listen to the story still stands on its own without the images, without the special effects. Of course, without the sounds, it wouldn't be there in your mind, But you take away the images and you give it's the imagination of a little boy. Yeah. Like it's boom. This epic is now here. It's in my head, and it is the epic George Lucas set out to make.
Oh yeah,
and 100%. And come on, Brock Peters, Tom Robinson, To Kill a Mockingbird. Like that's just awesome they get these like theater greats to do this.
I'm just surprised they got the actual cat. I think they said I was reading up. I don't know where Carrie Fisher was, but Harrison Ford couldn't do it because he was doing Raiders of the Lost Ark. Mm-hmm. But to even get like Anthony Daniels and Luke, I thought that was good. And then
I don't know Anthony Daniels. He's a whore for Star Wars. If you just say you get I get to show up. Sure, I'm there.
He loves that stuff, man. I mean, I would be the same freaking way,
I mean,
I've always wondered if that's what started Mark Hamill's like voice acting career. Like when he went on to like do the Joker, and do he did like I think Last Airbender. He did the bad guy in Last Airbender.
Yeah,
he's
Ozai.
Yeah, and that was like if this is me just dreaming and fanboying out, right? But if I ever got like a few moments with Mark Hamill, like I wouldn't bother with asking him about the movies. I would be like, what was it like working on those Brian Daly radio specials? Like, were you excited about that? Or was that just a job? Or did you enjoy it? Did you enjoy working with Brock Peters? Like, that's what I would want to pick his brain about is these radio specials.
Well, it's not talked about,
Yeah. One, I would want to be a different fan, like to ask him about things very few younger people probably have asked him about.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe, I don't know. Maybe that's just me being selfish, but that's what I would want to talk to him about. If I got a moment to sit down for coffee with Mark Hamill, it would be to ask him about these radios.
Dude, that'd be great. Dude,
be spot on. If you look at the guys who were there, I mean, they were already well accomplished not really voice actors, but radio show guys. And he probably said, well, you know what? I'm not always going to have this beautiful face, so I'm always going to have this voice, and I can change it and do whatever. I mean, it was like, I think it's the Rise of Skywalker. He does the voice of the guy dropping the intel down into the Falcon at the beginning. Yeah, so the guy's got a voice. I mean, he does good. So yeah, you're spot on with that. He may be taken back by it. Want to hear that side of it.
I'm just glad he's still coming back. He didn't really do very much for like the Mando. Like I'm sure he like gave his like 2 cents, but like he's not doing really anything. But I thought that was cool that he was still willing to like, cause like, we're not like that's also another topic for a whole nother time. But like what they did with Luke and really all of the characters, that they like think that's like. At least for people who grew up not just with the sequels, but grew up with all the other ones, I think a lot of people can agree that they didn't pass the torch very well.
Right.
Like that was like I think
Yeah.
that was why it was so divisive. Is just like they kind of were just like, hey, here are the old characters. All right, now they're gone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or kill them off one by one.
Yeah,
It was like
exactly.
a horror movie where they all have to survive a night in the house, and it's the old people that die first.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
It's good, but like,
But I thought that was really cool because you could kind of see in those interviews whether he's for it now or whether he came around and somebody, because everybody has their own view of Star Wars. If that's how he sees Star Wars now, that's great. If that's not how he sees it, also great. But to still come around, because he was pretty open about it when the Last
Right.
Jedi was premiering.
Yeah.
And to see him still kind of wanting to come back and being like, well, nobody else is going to play Luke. Like, that's why they CGI'd him, because like nobody else is going to play him. Like, it's always going to be him.
Yeah.
Right.
And I thought that was so cool. And to see him kind of do stuff like this too, like I really love it when actors like, then some way, shape, or form, like they are that character. Like that is a part of
yeah,
them. And
yeah,
they really care. Like.
yeah. And those of you that read like Carrie Fisher's book or Anthony Daniels' book,
Mhm.
like they're guardians of those characters. Like they went to cons for 20 years before the prequels came out.
Right.
And they were literally represented those characters to people, and they saw what those characters meant to people, especially those that didn't have family or didn't have friends. And so they became guardians of those characters. And maybe this is just me. Maybe I'm just like projecting what Anthony Daniels and Carrie Fisher said in their own books onto Mark Hamill.
Mhm.
And so Mark Hamill gets this chance to be Luke Skywalker for these little kids again. For kids like me that grew up listening to him every night, like looking at the glow in the dark stars on my ceiling, and to see him be this like washed up loser that like doesn't want to fight the bad guys. It's like, dude, who is this Luke Skywalker? And even Luke is like, a Jedi doesn't give up. Or even Mark Hamill was like, a Jedi doesn't give up. Luke would not give up because he knows what these characters mean to us. And Luke Skywalker meant something to Mark Hamill.
Oh, for sure.
And so like just to see like a director go like, no, it doesn't matter what people think of Luke Skywalker. It doesn't matter what you think of Luke Skywalker. Like imagine being the guardian of a character for 20 plus years and then hearing some like hot shit young kid director go, no, what you think and what they think doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like
40 plus years.
Yeah, 40 plus years. You're right. Yeah. Like that's just insane. Like why the hell wouldn't you take his opinion? Like,
yeah. And it's rough, and I try to also be like careful with what I say because I grew up with the prequels, and that was kind of a dark time for fans. A lot of prequel, like a lot of they were made for kids like me.
Right.
And they weren't for some of the older generation, and the older generation kind of stepped down on it and then influenced a lot of the young. Because I remember growing up, like I wouldn't even talk about the prequels like around like my friends and stuff like that. Like people knew I liked Star Wars, and that was like the extent. Like I kind of kept it to myself. I stayed in my own lane, which I regret doing because like I wish honestly, even with this channel, I wish I would have started this channel like years ago, man. Because I'm having so much fun. I mean, without this channel, I would have never met you guys. Like I'm meeting so many more like friend, like people I want to call friends, like I haven't even met you guys like physically, but I would consider you guys friends, and we sit here and talk for an hour and a half now almost, and like it's so cool that like we get to do like a lot of this stuff, and it's just like I don't want to take that away from somebody who loves the sequels. Like if that's what you like, and I'm not saying either of you guys are doing that, by the way. I was just like just saying that in general. I try to tread around that, but yeah, I think even as far as like story goes, right? Like if you're just looking at it like not from like what characters you like, from a storytelling point of view, I think what they did is they just try to shake things up too much. I mean I'm all about shaking things up. Like the straight and narrow path always isn't the right way to go, but I think there was so much lore that was established for a lot of these characters. Like Han returned to being like kind of like a deadbeat like he was in A New Hope, and I was just like what's going on with that? He kind of phased out of that already. Like he needs another arc. I think they made a right decision in killing him, because I thought that's the only torch that I thought that was passed rightfully so, because that transcended Ben right into further down the line. But like everybody else, I wish we could have got more from it. Like, I think there could have been
right.
more done. Like, it doesn't make sense that Luke would just sit and cower on
Yeah.
this island
Yeah.
because he's seen what that's done. Yoda did that. Obi-Wan did.
Yeah.
Obi-Wan had a mission, but Obi-Wan still did that. Like, he would have
Right.
seen that and been like, "That's not the right way. That's not the right
Right.
path forward." You know.
Now, I struggled hardcore with this for a while, like about the Luke Skywalker thing.
Mhm.
And then I kind of went back to like, okay, if this is myth, let's like trace this storyline in myth, right? Because George Lucas started Luke Skywalker in the history. What is it? The theory of it, the hero of a thousand
Hero's
faces,
journey.
like
Yeah.
right, the hero's journey cycle,
Mhm.
right? And if you go to some old myths like Beowulf or even some versions of Robin Hood,
Mhm.
like the last chapter, the hero is a washed up loser who is bitter and does one last good deed. Like Beowulf, like is this king. He's lived this long life of being elevated into a hero, and there's I think a dragon like attacks the city,
Mhm.
and like he's like, okay, I've sucked off, the teat of the taxpayer for way too long. I'm old and fat now. I have to kill this dragon. And so, like, if you look at it like that, it almost makes sense. Like, it is a theme in myth that, like, a hero eventually becomes so godlike that they let themselves go. And
Right.
then they turn bitter to the world. And then they need a fresh new hero. And think of how many workplaces you showed up at where there's this guy that's worked there for 20 plus years. And he's
Yeah.
like, when you're here for 13 years, kid, you'll get it.
Yeah,
You'll
come
get
back to
why
it.
I'm bitter.
Yeah.
Right. And it takes you a little while, but 7 or 8 years later, you're like, wow, I don't know if I want to work here anymore. And you can kind of feel yourself like going down like those bitter paths, And so I kind of came around to that. And okay, well, this is completing the myth, right? But what I wanted in my head as a kid was all the good times between what we got in Last Jedi and Return of the. And I'm okay now with the way it ended, but I'm ready for the canon to fill in the middle. I cannot wait to see what they do in the Mandalorian series. And that's why, like, in Mandalorian season 2, the finale, like, I can't express to you how I felt when I saw that X-Wing come across.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, that's Luke. You can't convince me it's anyone else. It is Luke. And then when the green lightsaber came, I didn't shout. I didn't cry.
You were just like
But I just,
immobilized.
like,
It was like you froze you, right? Like you were just like,
exactly.
And
in my head, like, here is this character, and are we going to get to see his face? And then boom. And then I read that Mark Hamill was on set.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh, I only hope that Mark Hamill was like, I'm finally getting to do Luke Skywalker the way I wanted to when this series ended. And I was just like hoping so much that he was like fulfilled. And I do not email actors. I don't send them fan mail. But I got on Instagram and I sent Mark Hamill a message. And of course he never messaged me back. Because it's probably not him running his Instagram, right? It's probably some publicist or whatever. But I just like blabbed about like how much he meant to me and how much it meant to me that he was probably on set at The Mandalorian. It was like the day after it came out. And I just couldn't help myself because of how much it meant. And told him about, hey, I used to listen to these radio series and I knew who you were before I knew who King Arthur was. So that's pretty damn cool, right?
Yeah, for sure, yeah.
So, yeah. So I'm just ready for them to fill in the gap with comics.
Oh, we're getting a Luke show, dude. They're not dumping all this technology and all this money. They're spending millions on these like couple episodes. We're getting a Luke show. Like, it's gonna happen.
I hope so.
Like they're gonna do it. Like, and if they don't, like, I'm just like, why? Like, it's clear that you guys are all about making money, and like you're a corporation, right? You kind of need to make money and all that stuff. It makes sense. Like, how many people like Luke? Like, why not? Like, either they should go all in, like, because they're kind of like tiptoeing through legacy characters right now. Like, we got Obi-Wan, we got Boba, we got like an early Han, and I feel like they're kind of just tiptoeing through them. Like, either don't do any legacy characters at all, make all new stuff like the Mandalorian that still takes place within that time periods, have some cameos, or swing hard. Just go
Right.
in, get somebody who knows Luke, get somebody who knows whatever Vader, get somebody who knows Obi-Wan and knows him. Like read all the material, read all the stuff, like knows about writing story and writing myths. Because I think that's a
Right.
lot of like what the problem is with Star Wars right now is I think a lot of these young writers that are being brought in, like they might like understand myth, but like you need to like live it, almost like you need
Right.
like it's like everybody thinks they're a storyteller until they're up to bat to do it, and then they're like, oh crap,
Right.
like how do I
Right.
form this together. So that was really only my thing is I think the writers really need to, and like also too, like what do I know, this is just my thoughts, like I'm not a writer, and like I'm kind of being a little hypocritical. This guy literally just said like everybody thinks they're a writer, but I really think like the myth in Star Wars is slowly like fading, and I think that needs to really make a hard, and that's what I'm hoping with Ahsoka, because I think
Right.
Dave Filoni understands that, because Dave Filoni was literally apprenticed to, he's literally George Lucas's apprentice, So I hope
Right.
we kind of get that with Ahsoka, but I really hope that they start bringing these myths kind of
Well,
back into it,
It's obvious they've got it in them. Like, look how well they did with Avengers. Now, the Avengers series aren't my favorite movies. I like a lot of them.
Mhm.
I don't like every single one of them. But the writers they brought in, like, they sat around. They had a collective vision for where that franchise was going. We're gonna conclude with one epic climax,
Mhm.
right? Like with the first phase of Avengers, right? And they brought in all these writers to write each individual character, and then each movie, like, okay, Captain America, right? They probably interpreted his from several different comics, and they could have gone a ton of different ways, right? They could have taken, but you can see where they're like, oh, they brought an influence from this comic, and they brought an influence from this comic, and oh, look where they could go now that the multiverse is here. What if they bring in Captain Hydra, and they're bringing in influence, but they're not like writing the comics. They're not like
copying
putting
and pasting, yeah.
right. But look what they could do with like Legends and new canon. They could pick and choose what they wanted. If they had like a grand vision, they could use like Legends and canon as inspiration, but now it kind of seems like everybody's like, oh, well, we'll just take this gun and add this scope, and we'll make our own stormtrooper, and like everybody's like,
Or we'll just give somebody an AK and make it look like.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys saw that in Rogue One,
did,
but literally the first scene, the guy just has an AK-47. I'm just like,
Hey,
Yeah.
hold on. There is a lot of differences. I peeled back that picture. The dust cover's different. There's a handful of stuff up front that's slightly different, but overall, an AK is so,
Sure.
well, I'm
pronounced
just
in what it is.
Look,
But
I
yes.
get it. Star Wars uses weapons, real world weapons, and puts greebles on them and stuff like that. But I'm sorry, the AK is probably arguably one of the most notable.
Recognizable.
Like you could not
Yes.
even like know anything about guns. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
I like guns. I don't know crap about guns, but I know what an AK looks
But you know
like.
an AK, yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. Like,
Thanks to Ice Cube, everybody knows.
Right.
yeah, dude, literally just put a side scope on it or something. Like
Yeah.
something that just
Well,
makes
like
it like
Elysium, remember that movie Elysium with Matt Damon? Even the AK he's running, it's full of
Yeah.
all kind of different
Mhm.
attachments and whatever that makes you know, okay, cool. We're using old hardware, but we've advanced it a little bit. But
yeah.
there's
Right.
there was a lot of difference. I've been tons of people. This is just so lazy. This is so lazy. I'm like, let's just wait till it comes out.
For
Let's
sure.
look at the differences.
Yeah, let's not judge a book by its cover.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
exactly.
I know. I was definitely nitpicking, like, because I said that in my review. I was like, hey, like, man, I'm nitpicking, but like, it was just a little weird because they have
Yeah.
an arsenal of weapons, literally an arsenal.
Yeah.
Like, think
Yeah.
about how many movies they've done since Disney has like bought. Like, you're gonna
Right.
tell me they're gonna just be like, hey, here's an like, yes, it is different.
Well,
There are some greebles on it, but like, just give the dude like an A20 or whatever, whatever the rebel gun. Like,
Yeah.
just something like you're just like, okay, Star Wars gun.
So
Even if
and
it's
two, I mean, there's so many weapons from World War II to choose from.
Mhm.
Really, George Lucas hit a couple of British guns and some German guns, and that's what we've known for all these years.
Mhm.
So I get bringing in the Russian guns, but there's tons of old school Russian square, from World War II. Their first
Right.
subguns and things like that. We could have taken
Yeah.
those and done some stuff, but I noticed
Yeah.
differences on the AK, but yeah, it
But-
was.
but
at the end of
that's
the
what
day,
I
don't
mean.
use that one.
There's not a collective vision for Star Wars. Like, you can tell each director has the vision for their
Exactly.
Star Wars.
Well, shoot, we
And
saw
it-
that with the sequels. I
Yeah.
mean, each person. I mean, they had, I'm sure, an overall arching. This is where we're going to start. This is where you have to end up. But you look at how they were just, you
Right.
know,
From what I heard, JJ had at least like the first two written out, and Ryan came in and was like, "No, I'm not doing any of that," and just like threw his like just like they did with George. George had an
Yeah.
original and that's like, man, can we please get that
Yeah.
script?
Dick Murphy.
Like,
Yeah.
I don't care if it's finished. I don't care if maybe he wrote the first 20 minutes of the sequel trilogy. I just want to see what idea he had, because what I heard is he had an idea of like what happens, kind of like in Heir to the Empire. What happens after the rebellion? Like, what happens to all these crime syndicates that are running around? Like, like power fills a vacuum, which they kind of play on that in Mando,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And you see that with Cobb Vanth and his town and stuff like that. But like, what happens on a galactic wide scale, you know? And it was supposed to be with like, from what I've heard, like, who knows? Because you hear so many different things, and you never know what's truer. But like,
Dozens.
just like my favorite characters are Darth Maul and Luke. Like, I don't know if you guys can see, I have like
those are
a
cool.
billion Darth Maul characters. I got a lot of Luke stuff. I got the Heir to the Empire Luke that I still haven't opened up yet. He's just still chilling in the box.
Ooh,
Yeah.
nice.
But to see Darth Maul face off with Luke and a new apprentice, and like having like even something like the First Order plus Darth Maul plus the New Republic like facing off against each other, like I just want to read that script. You know,
That's
like,
awesome.
you're like, let me read that, because I thought it was cool to read the Colin Trevorrow script. Like, I read through that and like looked through it and like, wow, like
I saw the concept art.
yeah, the concept art was cool. I thought
I didn't read it.
some parts were cool, some parts were kind of meh, you know. But like, but overall, it was still like like I said, I'm in the what if side of Star Wars right now, you know. So like, I always like seeing like what could have been, you know.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
But
That's what keeps us fresh, though.
yeah. But let's tell the viewers what you guys' all your Instagrams and all that stuff, all your social medias.
Yep.
And we'll go with Brad first because we went with Neal you last time. So
You can find me at Dragon_Hosk on all the socials. Yeah, find me on one of those. Hit the link tree, and it'll take you everywhere. No YouTube, nothing cool like that. Just sharing pictures.
soon, right? Soon. You gotta get on
Maybe
there.
we'll see. We'll see.
I think, dude, I think with you doing all those props and stuff like that, man, making those, just make like shorts, like you do like your Instagram reels, man.
There's a gentleman that I've been talking with who he's a composer,
Mhm.
and he's like, one day we got to do a quick collaboration,
Mhm.
and I was like, I don't have anything, and he's like, well, even like a fan film. So immediately got the wheels turning. I mean, my kid, he's 14 or she's about to be 15, and I had another page, some gun stuff, but anyways, he would film me doing a couple different things and then edit it all together, and I would just lay music on top. Where me and Alton James, if you need somebody to write an intro, things like that, I know Max, you were talking about it.
Mhm.
Alton James, the guy he's amazing with the stuff that he does. But anyway, give him a check him out. But he just having him lay over, because he can do, sounds, tone the vibe with different music and stuff like that. And but I brought it up. We started talking today about, maybe I can do a couple quick shorts. Just something in the backyard, holding a gadget, doing something real quick, and working it into like maybe a small series. We'll see. I don't know.
I'm telling you, man. If you, I know, because like I said, like that stuff takes a lot of time. So like I completely understand. But if you can do it, I would highly recommend it, because I think people would eat that up. And like I said,
we'll see.
Even doing shorts, man. Like shorts are like the next big thing right now with YouTube. So like you just literally upload your reels to the shorts, and
yeah, exactly.
But Neal, what about you, man? What's your social medias?
Yeah, you can find me at Rebel Scum 375 on Instagram. It's all just I'm customizing Star Wars figures into Rebels, kind of making my own universe. Pretty much any character that you could picture as a rebel, I'm going to try to do it. And
Nice.
the rebellion is big, and it's growing across the galaxy, and we can't stand to see the Imperial flag reign.
Heck
just
yeah.
like Saw Gerrera.
I gotta give you a shout out. Your figures and the scenes you set up, man.
Thanks.
Just I always tell you, it just gets my mind racing to like what's the next? What are we gonna see next?
It's
Yeah,
so
I love
cool,
it.
man. I love custom
I really
figures and like
appreciate
the
that.
photos and stuff like that. I know how much time that stuff takes. Just like I don't do custom
Yeah,
figures, but just doing like my own custom stuff, I know how much customs take time. So like
yeah.
that dedication that you have, dude, it's really awesome, man.
I really appreciate that. I appreciate you doing these radio dramas. They're so near and
Heck
dear to
yeah,
my
dude.
heart. I had these dramas on cassette tape before I ever had the movies on VHS. And so for a long time, this is what Star Wars was to me until I got the VHSs like in the late 90s when they re-released them, um, before the special editions came out. So like uh, so that they get to talk about these and they get to like acknowledge their existence with other people is pretty awesome.
Well, it's
So I
cool,
appreciate
dude, because it's like it's
Yeah,
so special to you, and then you shared
yeah,
that with us, and now we all have that bond of like listening to it and
yes,
talking about it and stuff like that. So that's like the whole reason why I started this channel and wanted to do this. A lot of like my podcast, which you guys haven't been on for the solo versions yet, but I'm gonna get you guys on. We're gonna book something, but like that was the whole point of that is to like share and people's nostalgia and how they grew up and why they love. Like we all love this franchise so much, you know,
right.
and sharing like that nostalgia that you have for that, sharing that with us, and then we have it now too. It's like it's such a cool thing, man. So like
yeah,
just as
Totally.
much as you thank us, we thank you, you know, for bringing it
yeah.
up.
Definitely. I will tell you, what I knew and how excited I was about the radio drama. When you started this off, I mean, it just, I guess it made it more wholesome than me. You know what I mean? Made it more real.
Heck yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
Awesome. Good.
Well,
I'm glad.
thank you guys so much for tuning in. This will probably be out either this week or next week, depending on how busy I am. But it'll be out.
Awesome.
Like and subscribe, do all that jazz, and we will catch you guys in the next video. And as always,
Bye.
may the force be with you.